the garden of inner silence. In a world where constant noise steals our serenity and worries fill every corner of our minds, there exists a refuge many of us have forgotten: inner peace. This Zen tale invites us to walk alongside Kenji, a tea master who, after decades of relentless searching, discovers that the tranquility he longed for was never far from him. Through his contemplative journey, we explore how to find mental calm in the midst of everyday chaos, how stress and anxiety can transform into opportunities for personal growth, and how true fulfillment doesn't require perfect conditions but rather a different way of seeing what we already have. If you've reached a point in your life where you seek something deeper than material success, if you long to wake up each morning with serenity instead of worry, if you wish to reconnect with that quiet essence you once knew, this story was written for you. Prepare a cup of tea, find a comfortable place, and allow yourself this moment of pause. The answers you're searching for may be closer than you imagine. Chapter 1: The Weight of the Years. Kenji was 57 years old when he finally stopped to observe his own reflection in the temple pond. The man staring back at him looked tired, his wrinkles telling stories of accumulated worries and sleepless nights. For 3 decades he had served tea with expert hands, yet his mind had never been truly present in the gesture. His search for inner peace had consumed him in a paradoxical way. He had read hundreds of books on meditation and mindfulness, attended emotional well-being retreats, consulted teachers who promised enlightenment. And yet the mental tranquility he longed for slipped through his fingers like water every time he thought he had finally captured it. Why is serenity denied to me? He wondered each morning as he swept the leaves of the Zen garden. Stress and anxiety accompanied him even in moments that should have been sacred. During the tea ceremony, his mind drifted to unpaid bills, arguments with his brother, and the inevitable fear of aging and loneliness. One autumn afternoon, as he organized his ceramic cups, one slipped from his trembling hands and shattered against the stone floor. Kenji froze, staring at the scattered fragments, and something inside him broke as well. He fell to his knees and, for the first time in years, allowed his tears to flow freely. They weren't tears of frustration but of surrender. He had spent so long chasing peace that he had forgotten how to simply be. In that moment of absolute vulnerability, kneeling among the porcelain shards, something began to shift. The garden around him seemed to breathe with him, and for a fleeting instant, he experienced what he had spent decades seeking: calm in the midst of chaos, not despite it, but through it. The temple's elder, Master Sato, walked past him without a word. She simply placed a new broom at his side and said a phrase that would echo in his heart: "Broken cups are also perfect." Chapter 2: The Art of Letting Go. The days that followed were different for Kenji, not because his external circumstances had changed, but because something inside him had moved. The inner peace he had chased with such desperation began to reveal itself not as a destination but as a way of walking. Master Sato invited him into her room, an austere space containing only the essential: a meditation cushion, a teapot, and a vase with a single flower. "Observe," she said, pointing to the red camellia. "This flower doesn't try to be beautiful. It doesn't carry the anxiety of wilting tomorrow. It simply exists as it is in this moment." Kenji had heard similar teachings before, but something different happened this time. The words didn't remain in his mind as abstract mindfulness concepts but penetrated deeper, touching a truth his body knew yet had forgotten. Over the weeks that followed, the master taught him the practice of conscious letting go. It wasn't about eliminating worries or rejecting stress and anxiety but changing his relationship with them. Mental tranquility doesn't mean the absence of storms, she explained as they prepared tea together. It means learning to be the sky that watches the clouds pass, not the clouds themselves. Kenji began applying this perspective to his daily tasks. While sweeping the Zen garden, instead of losing himself in thoughts about the future, he felt the weight of the broom in his hands, listened to the rustling leaves, watched how his breath naturally synchronized with his movements. When thoughts of worry arrived, He noticed them without judgment, as one observes birds crossing the sky. One day, while washing the teacups, memories of his painful divorce resurfaced. But this time, instead of resisting or collapsing into the spiral, he simply recognized, there is sadness here, and something extraordinary happened. By naming it without dramatizing or rejecting it, the emotion found space to exist and eventually transform. He understood then that serenity wasn't a permanent state achieved once and for all. It was more like a muscle of attention. The more he exercised it, the more natural it became to return to center, even after getting lost in the storm. Chapter 3: The Scars That Teach. Winter arrived at the temple, bringing a cold that seeped into the bones. Kenji had learned much about inner peace during the previous months, but life had prepared a deeper test for him. His older brother, from whom he'd been estranged for 5 years due to a family inheritance dispute, appeared at the temple seeking refuge after losing his job and home. Takashi's arrival stirred up emotions Kenji thought he had processed. Resentment, shame, guilt, anger, old ghosts returning from the shadows. His practice of mindfulness and meditation was challenged as never before. For days Kenji avoided his brother, serving tea in silence, retiring early to his room. The stress and anxiety he had managed to calm returned forcefully, manifesting in insomnia and tight shoulders. What good is all I've learned about mental tranquility? He scolded himself. If the first real challenge sends me right back into turmoil. Master Sato watched without intervening until one night she found him sitting alone in the Zen garden under the moon. Emotional scars are like the cracks in kintsugi pottery, she said. When we repair them with gold, we don't try to hide that they were broken. Beauty arises precisely from honoring the fracture. Kenji realized he had been seeking peace as a way to avoid pain, when true serenity required moving through it. It wasn't about achieving a state of emotional perfection where nothing disturbed him, but developing the capacity to remain present even when things felt painfully uncomfortable. The next morning, Kenji prepared 2 cups of tea and sat with his brother. The words were few and awkward at first, heavy with years of silence. Takashi's eyes were moist, his face marked by struggle. And Kenji, instead of defending his position or demanding apologies, simply listened. He listened to his brother's failures, fears, and loneliness. And as he listened, something in his own heart softened. It wasn't an instant forgiveness or magical reconciliation, but something more subtle and real. The ability to see his brother not as the enemy of an old story, but as another human being trying to find his own calm in the chaos. The weeks that followed were not easy, but they were true. The brothers worked together in the garden, shared meals in contemplative silence, and little by little built a bridge over the abyss that had separated them. Kenji discovered that inner peace didn't isolate him from the world's pain. It allowed him to meet it with more compassion and less resistance. Chapter 4: The Wisdom of the Body. With the arrival of spring, Kenji noticed something he had overlooked throughout his spiritual quest. His body had been trying to speak to him for decades, but he had been too busy living in his head to listen. The chronic tension in his neck, the back pains he attributed merely to aging, the sluggish digestion. All were messages he had never decoded. Master Sato introduced him to a new dimension of inner peace, the mind-body connection. Your body is not a vehicle transporting your head from place to place, she explained during a walking meditation session. It is the physical manifestation of every unprocessed thought, every stored emotion, every moment of stress and anxiety you have tried to ignore. Kenji began practicing conscious breathing exercises, not as another technique to achieve enlightenment, but as a way to fully inhabit his physical experience. He discovered that when anxiety arose, it was not just a thought in his mind, but a sensation. A tightness in his chest, a racing pulse, a knot in his stomach. One morning, while performing the slow Tai Chi movements Master Sato had taught him, he experienced a profound revelation. For 57 years, he had treated his body with a certain neglect. pushing it when it was tired, ignoring its signals of hunger or satiety, feeding it in haste and distraction. He had sought mental tranquility while living in conflict with his own flesh. He began cultivating what the master called somatic mindfulness, eating with full attention, savoring every bite, walking while feeling the connection of his feet to the earth, sleeping in harmony with his body's natural rhythms rather than forcing it to conform to arbitrary expectations. Each practice was simple, almost childlike in its simplicity, yet transformative in its impact. His brother Takashi, who was still helping with the temple chores, noticed the change. "You look different," he remarked one evening while preparing dinner. "Not younger, but more present." Kenji smiled. For the first time in decades, he truly felt inhabiting his life rather than observing it from a distant mental tower. Emotional well-being, he realized, was not something that happened solely in the mind or the body, but in the space where both met. The serenity he had sought in books and retreats was available in every mindful breath, every step taken with awareness, every moment he chose to be fully present in his physical experience. One night, lying on his futon, Kenji placed his hand over his heart and felt the steady beat, a rhythm that had been pulsing since birth without his true attention. Tears came again, but this time they were tears of gratitude for a body that, despite years of neglect, still supported him, breathed for him, and offered him yet another opportunity to awaken to life. Chapter 5: The Temple of the Ordinary. Summer arrived with long, warm days, bringing with it a profound understanding that completely transformed Kenji's spiritual pursuit. For years, he had imagined that inner peace required special conditions: retreats in monasteries, hours of formal meditation, detachment from the mundane world. But life in the temple was teaching him something radically different. Master Sato had a unique way of pointing out the sacred in the ordinary. "Do you see that crack in the wall?" she asked one morning as they swept the corridor. "It has been there for 30 years. Some days it bothers me and I think about repairing it. Other days, the light at sunset passes through it in such a way that it looks like a river of gold. The crack doesn't change. My mind does." Kenji began applying this mindfulness perspective to every aspect of his daily routine. Washing dishes became a meditation on impermanence. Stains that appeared and vanished, water flowing and leaving, his hands aging but still capable. It was no longer a tedious task to be completed quickly, but an opportunity to experience mental calm in the present moment. His brother Takashi had found work in the nearby village but chose to return to the temple each evening. One afternoon, they shared tea in silence, watching how the shadows lengthened over the Zen garden. "You know," Takashi said after a long pause, "all my life I chased success thinking that when I achieved it, I would finally be at peace. I lost that success and thought I had lost my chance to be happy. But here, scrubbing floors and cutting vegetables with you, I found more serenity than in all my years of business triumphs." His brother's words resonated deeply with Kenji. Both had fallen into the same trap, believing that emotional well-being was somewhere other than the present moment, in some future version of themselves or in perfect external circumstances. The stress and anxiety that had consumed them stemmed precisely from that constant rejection of the now. Master Sato then taught them about the concept of Ichigo Ichi. Each encounter, each moment, is unique and unrepeatable. "This cup of tea you drink now," she explained, pouring with precise movements, "will never exist in exactly this way again. This instant of light, temperature, and your inner state is singular. When you live each moment fully without clinging or resisting, you discover that inner peace is not a future destination, but the very texture of the present experienced without resistance." Kenji began noticing small, everyday miracles that had previously gone unnoticed. The way his breath naturally synced with the cicada's song at sunset, the simple pleasure of fresh water on a hot day, the deep satisfaction of a job well done. There was nothing extraordinary in these moments, and that was precisely their magic. One night, as he prepared his futon for sleep, He paused and observed his hands. They were the same hands that had trembled with anxiety for years, that had held cups of tea without truly feeling them, that had always been busy moving to the next moment without honoring the present. Now, those hands moved with a calmness amidst chaos that once would have seemed impossible. Not because he had achieved some elevated state of consciousness, but because he had finally stopped seeking peace anywhere other than here and now. Chapter 6. The Ghosts of the Past. Autumn returned to the temple with its warm palette of colors, marking the anniversary of the day Kenji had broken the ceramic cup, and a part of himself along with it. A year had passed, yet some ghosts of the past still lingered in the corners of his mind, waiting for moments of vulnerability to resurface. A letter arrived at the temple, sent by his ex-wife, Michiko. 11 years had passed since the divorce, 11 carefully maintained years of silence. Kenji's hands trembled as he held the envelope. The simple paper held the power to destabilize months of inner peace practice, revealing just how fragile his serenity still was. Master Sato found him sitting in the Zen garden, the unopened letter in his lap. "The ghosts of the past do not come to torment us," she said gently. "They come to show us the parts of our story we have not fully integrated. They are teachers disguised as pursuers." With his heart racing, Kenji opened the letter. Michiko wrote about her own healing journey, the years of therapy it took to understand the patterns that had destroyed their marriage, patterns they both had contributed to. She did not ask for forgiveness, nor did she offer it. She simply shared her process and expressed hope that he too had found a path toward emotional well-being. Reading her words unleashed a cascade of memories. Endless arguments, even more painful silences, the gradual erosion of love into resentment. Kenji felt the flood of emotions he had tried to meditate away. Guilt, shame, regret, anger. The stress and anxiety he thought he had overcome returned with overwhelming force. That night he could not sleep. He sat in meditation, but instead of finding mental calm, his mind spun like a storm. Then he remembered Master Sato's words. True mindfulness practice is not about eliminating difficult thoughts, but about changing our relationship with them. Kenji stopped resisting. Rather than trying to calm his mind, he let the memories flow freely, observing them as one watches a film. He saw his younger self, full of professional ambition, neglecting his marriage. He saw Michiko, equally lost in her own pursuits. Two people who had loved each other but never truly met in the present. For the first time, instead of harshly judging that younger Kenji or defending himself from guilt, he offered compassion. "You did the best you could with the awareness you had at the time," he told himself. And something extraordinary happened. The weight on his chest began to lighten. The next morning, Kenji wrote a response. It was not long or elaborate, but it was honest. He thanked Michiko for sharing her process, acknowledged his own role in their mutual pain, and wished her peace. As he sealed the envelope, it felt as if he were sealing a chapter, not with forgetting or denial, but with compassionate acceptance. His brother Takashi, who had observed the entire process, said, "I always thought inner peace meant having no more wounds. But seeing you these days has taught me that maybe it's more about learning to hold our wounds gently, like holding a crying child." Kenji nodded. The serenity he had cultivated over the year had not been broken by the letter. It had deepened. He had learned that true calm amidst chaos does not mean the absence of emotional storms, but the ability to remain centered while they pass, knowing that, like all things, they too are impermanent. Chapter 7. The Transmission of Silence. Winter returned to the temple, but this time it felt different. Master Sato, who had been Kenji's silent guide throughout his journey, began showing signs that her time in this world was nearing its end. At 89, her fragile body moved with increasing difficulty, yet her presence remained luminous. One morning, after meditation, the master asked to speak with Kenji and Takashi together. Her eyes shone with a clarity that seemed to pierce through time itself. I have lived long enough to understand that the true transmission of inner peace does not happen through words or formal teachings, she said softly. It happens in the shared silence between human beings who have learned to be present without masks. In the following weeks, Kenji took on more responsibilities at the temple while caring for the master. He prepared meals with absolute mindfulness, helped her walk through the garden, and sat with her in long contemplative silences. There was no rush, no agenda, just the natural flow of time and attentive presence. One afternoon, as they shared tea, the master observed the two brothers with a gentle smile. "Do you see how hot water transforms tea leaves?" she asked. "This is how suffering works when we embrace it instead of resisting it. It does not destroy us. It transforms us into something deeper, more fragrant, more nourishing for others." Takashi, who had been struggling with his own pursuit of emotional well-being, asked, "Master, how can I know if I have truly attained inner peace, or if I am merely pretending to be at peace?" The master laughed softly, a laugh that seemed to contain the wisdom of the universe. "True serenity is not attained. It is discovered, and you discover it when you stop asking whether you have it." The days grew shorter and colder. The master spent more time in silence, her breathing becoming ever more subtle. Kenji felt the fear of loss arise, ancient stress and anxiety at the impermanence of all things. But this time, instead of fleeing from anticipated pain, he allowed himself to feel it fully. One snowy night, the master gathered her strength to share one final teaching. "Kenji, Takashi, listen well. You will spend the rest of your lives believing you fully understand what mental calm is, only to discover deeper layers you never knew existed. That is correct. Peace is not a destination. It is a continuous flowering." She paused, inhaling slowly. "And when fear comes, when doubt visits, when you feel you have lost everything you learned, remember this. You have never been separate from calm amidst chaos. You are that calm, momentarily forgotten by itself, but always present, always available, patiently waiting to be recognized again." 3 days later, Master Sato passed away peacefully in her sleep. The temple filled with a different kind of silence, not absence, but fullness. Kenji and Takashi sat beside her body all night, without words, just presence. And in that space of absolute stillness, they understood what the master had tried to convey. That true inner peace was not something she had given them, but something they had always carried within, and she had simply helped them remember. At dawn, as they prepared her body according to tradition, Kenji felt a profound gratitude mingled with sorrow. He had learned that authentic serenity contained the full range of human emotions, without rejecting any of them. Grief was part of peace, love included loss, and life embraced both birth and death. Chapter 8. The Garden That Blossoms Within. Spring returned to the temple, bringing fresh green shoots and the renewed song of birds. Kenji was now 59, and when he gazed at his reflection in the pond, he no longer saw the exhausted, fragmented man from 2 years ago. The wrinkles remained, now deeper, but they seemed like furrows of wisdom rather than marks of worry. The temple had subtly changed since Master Sato's passing. Kenji and Takashi cared for it together, each bringing their unique form of presence. Visitors seeking answers about inner peace found not a guru with magical formulas, but 2 ordinary men who had learned to live with greater awareness. One afternoon, a middle-aged woman named Yuki arrived at the temple, her eyes marked by the stress and anxiety Kenji knew so well. "I've read every book on mindfulness," she said, voice trembling. "I've tried every meditation technique, but the mental calm everyone promises never comes. What am I doing wrong?" Kenji smiled with understanding and offered her tea. "Tell me," he said simply, "what did you feel when you woke up this morning?" Yuki seemed puzzled by the question but eventually replied, "Anxiety. Always anxiety. The feeling that there's something I should be doing, something I'm missing. And when that anxiety comes," Kenji continued, pouring tea with slow, deliberate movements. "What do you do with it?" Yuki paused. "I try to make it go away. I breathe deeply, repeat affirmations, try to replace it with positive thoughts. But it always comes back." Kenji nodded. "For decades, I did exactly the same. I turned my search for serenity into a war against parts of myself. But true inner peace doesn't arrive when we win that war. It arrives when we stop fighting." In the following weeks, Yuki stayed at the temple, not for a formal retreat, but simply living. She worked in the Zen garden with the brothers, prepared meals, washed clothes, swept the courtyard. There were no lofty teachings or complex techniques, only a constant invitation to be fully present in each ordinary action. One morning, while Yuki chopped vegetables for lunch, she began to cry. Kenji, preparing rice nearby, didn't intervene immediately. He simply remained present. After several minutes, Yuki spoke. "I just realized I've spent 20 years of my life waiting to start living, always thinking, when the children grow up, when I retire, when I finally find peace. Meanwhile, life has been happening here. In every moment I've been too distracted to notice." That night, the three of them sat together in the garden under the stars. "Do you know the most radical thing I've learned here?" Yuki shared. "That emotional well-being doesn't require my life to be perfect or my problems to disappear. I can feel calm amid chaos simply by letting things be as they are, including my own imperfection." Takashi added, "And that acceptance isn't resignation or defeat. It's the only real ground from which something genuine can grow." Kenji looked at his brother with pride. Takashi had found his own path to inner peace, forged through failure, humility, and the grace of beginning again. Months passed. Yuki eventually returned to her life in the city, but something fundamental had shifted in her. They kept in touch through letters in which she shared her discoveries. How mindfulness naturally integrated into her routine as a working mother, how she found moments of stillness even in the crowded subway, how her relationships deepened when she stopped being lost in her mental narrative. One autumn afternoon, while Kenji watered the garden, he paused to truly observe the plants. Some bloomed gloriously, others struggled to survive. Some were in transition, dying to make way for new life. And all were part of the garden's perfection. So was his own life. Some days he blossomed with serenity, other days he wrestled with old patterns. Some days he simply was, neither blooming nor struggling. He realized that the question that had haunted him for decades, "How do I find inner peace?" had been replaced by a deeper understanding. He already was that peace. He had just forgotten to recognize it. The search had ended, not because he reached some elevated spiritual destination, but because he finally stopped looking outside for what had always been within. That night, Kenji wrote in his journal something he hadn't done in years. "True inner peace is not the absence of storms, but learning to dance in the rain. It is not eliminating stress and anxiety, but changing our relationship with them. It is not achieving a permanent state of mental calm, but developing the ability to return to center again and again, no matter how many times we lose ourselves." He closed the journal and stepped into the garden. The full moon illuminated the pond with a silver glow. He sat in his favorite spot, the same place where 2 years ago he had broken the ceramic cup and himself. He smiled, remembering the desperate man who had searched everywhere except where it really mattered. A young visitor, timidly approaching the temple that day, asked, "Master Kenji, could you teach me the secret of serenity?" Kenji looked at him kindly. "I am no one's master," he replied softly. "But if you want, tomorrow you can help me sweep the leaves. That is all you need to know." The young visitor seemed puzzled, perhaps expecting some elaborate teaching. But Kenji simply remained silent, watching the moon's reflection in the water. After a moment, the young man sat beside him, and together they stayed like that. Two human beings sharing the stillness of the night, without words or explanations. Years continued to flow. More people came to the temple, each with their own stories of suffering and search. Kenji and Takashi welcomed them all with the same simple presence. Shared tea, cooperative work, contemplative silences. They promised no quick solutions or permanent states of emotional well-being, for they had learned that such promises were themselves sources of suffering. Instead, they offered something more valuable: the company of human beings who had walked the path, who knew both dark valleys and luminous peaks, and who had discovered that true calm amidst chaos is not something possessed but something practiced, moment by moment, breath by breath. One winter morning, several years later, Kenji awoke with crystalline clarity. He was 63, and for the first time in his life, he did not feel the urgency to be different from what he was. He was not perfectly serene at every moment, had not eliminated all imperfections, had not reached any elevated mystical state. But he had found something infinitely more valuable: the ability to be present with what is, exactly as it is, without adding or subtracting anything. He rose, prepared tea, and stepped into the garden he now knew intimately. Every stone, every plant, every corner was familiar, yet he discovered something new each day. So it was with his own inner landscape, infinitely known and infinitely mysterious. Takashi joined him after his morning meditation. The brothers sat together, drinking tea in the comfortable silence of those who had learned that not all questions need answers, and not all silences need to be filled with words. "Do you know," Takashi finally said, "I still feel anxiety sometimes. My mind still races with worries. But I no longer feel anxious about feeling anxious, if that makes sense." Kenji nodded with a smile. That is true freedom, not the absence of challenges, but the peace of knowing we can meet them without losing ourselves completely. The sun began to rise over the distant mountains, painting the sky with shades of pink and gold. Kenji watched as the light gradually transformed the garden, revealing details hidden in the darkness. Such was consciousness. It did not change reality, but illuminated it in ways that allowed one to see it more clearly. He thought of all the people who had passed through the temple seeking inner peace, and those who would continue to arrive. Each believed their search was unique, their pain special, the solution somewhere distant and hard to reach. And perhaps the greatest lesson he could now offer was this: the peace they sought already resided within them, patiently waiting to be recognized, like the dawn light that is always there, even before darkness recedes. A new day began at the temple. Daily tasks awaited: sweeping, cooking, cleaning, gardening. Nothing extraordinary, nothing special. And precisely in that unpretentious ordinariness, in the complete embrace of life as it is, moment by moment, Kenji had discovered the treasure he had sought all his life. He rose, felt the weight of his body as he stood, noticed the faint creak of his aging knees. He picked up the broom, felt its familiar texture in his hands, and began sweeping the leaves fallen overnight. Not as a task to complete, not as a means to reach something else, but simply as what it was: a man, a broom, falling leaves, life unfolding. And in that perfectly imperfect moment, there was peace. Not the dramatic peace of sudden enlightenment or elevated mystical states, but the quiet, almost invisible peace of being fully present in ordinary life. The peace that had been there all along, waiting only to be recognized. The garden of inner silence had blossomed, not outside, but within, where it had always been. Epilogue: the eternal garden. Years passed like flowing water. Kenji's hair turned silver, and Takashi too aged gracefully. The temple remained a quiet sanctuary for those who sought respite from the storm of everyday life. People arrived with questions, doubts, and anxieties, yet many discovered something unexpected: that the answers they were seeking were not hidden in exotic teachings, nor in distant lands, but within the ordinary rhythm of daily life. One crisp morning, Kenji walked to the edge of the pond. He gazed at the reflection of the sky rippling across the water, a reminder that life is ever-changing, never static. He remembered the young, desperate man who had arrived at the temple years ago, burdened by his own thoughts and fears. That man was still within him, yes, but now he was accompanied by wisdom earned through patience, observation, and surrender. He heard the soft footsteps of a new visitor approaching. It was a child, perhaps 8 or 9, curious and wide-eyed. "Are you a master?" the child asked, voice full of innocent expectation. Kenji smiled gently. "I am no master," he replied, "but I can show you how to sweep the leaves, how to pour tea, how to watch the clouds. That is enough to begin." The child looked puzzled, then nodded, and together they walked toward the garden. Kenji felt the same gentle warmth he had felt when guiding Yuki and countless others, an unspoken continuity of life and learning. He realized that the true garden was eternal. It was not bound by the walls of the temple, nor by the seasons, nor even by his own lifetime. The garden existed wherever a human heart paused, observed, and embraced the present moment. And in that understanding, Kenji felt a profound joy, not a fleeting excitement, but a steady, luminous contentment. He understood, finally, that serenity was not a destination, nor a prize, nor a secret. It was a practice, a breath-by-breath, moment-by-moment cultivation of presence, awareness, and gentle acceptance. The sun rose, golden light spilling across the leaves and stones. Kenji watched, and in that quiet illumination, he saw clearly life, in all its impermanence and unpredictability, was complete. And within that completion there was peace. The eternal garden bloomed, not in grand gestures, but in the soft, persistent rhythm of ordinary life, the harmony of moments fully lived. Kenji closed his eyes, breathed deeply, and let the simple, endless beauty of now envelop him completely. And so the garden of inner silence continued, beyond time, beyond words, waiting quietly for anyone willing to notice and rest within its stillness.